So Graham, as a performance coach, how important do you feel feedback is when it comes to developing performance?
Yeah, well, I think it's really important. As we establish self-awareness, so the first thing in terms of developing people and performance, we need to kind of be really acutely aware of the now. And then, of course, we need to decide where we're going to move to. We're going to help somebody get there. As we start to do things and change for the first time, we need basically to be sure that we're doing what we think we're doing. Now, two types of feedback, intrinsic and extrinsic. So our bodies, our neuromuscular skeletal chain, all right, has intrinsic feedback. So that's kinesthetic and proprioceptive. They're little sensory receptors that kind of help us to feel how we're doing stuff, to get a feel of it. And we're comparing that against a mental image of what we think we're trying to do. But how good would it be to have some extrinsic feedback to confirm or deny it? So it's the role of the manager or the leader or the coach, in my case, both, to be that trusted extrinsic source that says, how do you think that went? Yes, I think it went well because, and to be able to say absolutely yes, or maybe challenge some of that thinking. What we're trying to do is help somebody feel it themselves so that they don't need us. The performer, we can develop the performer to be actually make changes and adjustments when we're not there.
So how do you do that?
Well, there's a number of ways, okay, through discussion, through challenge. Use pictures, use videos, use data, yeah? Anything that you've got that can basically provide them with really trusted source of feedback. What we're trying to do here is provide somebody with the insight they need, the metrics, the objective metrics that will define whether they're doing what they think they're doing.
Okay, and I guess I know when we do training on giving feedback, you do a great demonstration with a bucket and some balls. I'm not going to give anything away, but it really highlights, I think, in that demonstration that you do, questioning, how important the use of questions.
Yeah, I think when we're giving feedback, we're assuming we're providing something, we're telling somebody what to do. Not necessarily. I would say hold back with the telling. I would say challenge people's intrinsic system, because that will be providing them with feedback. So ask the questions and get them to internally check in to say, did I do that? Did that feel right? Do I think that went well? And then, of course, you're the trusted source to provide that information as to that challenge.
I was going to say, because I guess when you confirm that how they felt something has gone, when you confirm or deny that, that then builds their trust in their ability to give themselves that, to trust their own intrinsic
absolutely
feedback.
Yes, because that's what you want at the end of the day. We want performers to be able to perform in their autonomy. Even the top coaches in the world want to basically make themselves redundant. And I think the best managers and leaders, we've talked in other videos about like delegating stuff and getting people to own their performance. Feedback is part of the journey and part of the requirement to help somebody exist in that world, make decisions for themselves and perform at the highest level without somebody with them.
Okay, so we know how important it is because, we always say you wouldn't wait to get to the Olympics to tell your high jumpers that they weren't ready to jump that high over a bar. So we know how important it is. But what would you say are the do's and don'ts of giving effective feedback? Because it could be a potential, could be seen as a potential negative.
Oh, for sure. And I think what we have to understand is understand why you're giving feedback. What's the intention? What's the purpose? What value are you adding to the performer by giving them some feedback? This shouldn't be about you, this should be about them. So the most important thing is that they trust your intention and they want to listen. Remember, humans are wired negatively. So if somebody is under pressure or in a stress response and they feel that you're about to attack them in some way, their self-esteem, their skillfulness, their credibility, their mental state, how they're doing something, if they feel that's a negative, an attack, they're going to shut down. Their ability to listen and be able to ration out what you're saying and practically reapply it will be zero.
Because
So
they've gone
language
into that kind of defensive mode, and then that
Correct.
flight or fight is triggered.
So I always pick these 4 kind of common areas as a starting point to avoid that and make sure we engage somebody in the conversation. Because ultimately, if they're going to change the way they do something because of your feedback, then it's important how you say it, all right, where you say it, the timing, and maybe how often. So let me give you a few do's and don'ts. So if we talk about manner, we're talking about how you say it, not just how you say it, as in the words, but we know in previous videos where we've had discussions that 80% of what you're saying is not being said.
Yep.
It's being said by your mannerisms.
A picture paints 1,000 words.
Correct. So actually think about the manner of what you're saying. That includes the environment. Is this the right place to say it? Am I saying it with the right tone? Am I in the right scenario?
Okay.
So all these kind of things, right? Have a think to make it effective. How am I saying it? The next thing, be sure about what you're saying. Don't lose the really important message through waffle. The content needs to be really thought about. It needs to be factual. It needs to be structured. And it needs to be clear and concise. It needs to be relevant. It needs to have meaning. And ultimately, you're looking for the content to impact on the performer.
Okay.
The timing's so important.
Talk to me about the timing then.
I'd love to be able to define this perfectly, but of course, that's not the real world. So I kind of have to talk about some scenarios that maybe should affect our decision making. And I think the one biggest contributor will be our emotional state. Our ability to listen to feedback. Remember, feedback is a suggestion or comments on yourself. And of course, as I said earlier about that fight or flight response, we want to make sure somebody is able to listen. If we've got a highly emotive subject, or we just something where our emotional state could be high, hold off. Maybe hold off. But if you've got something really critical to say, make some contemporaneous notes. Remind yourself, because we don't want to lose what we wanted to say. We also don't want to leave it too long, do we? Because we want to speak to somebody. Remember, extrinsic, intrinsic.
Yep.
So we want somebody to still be able to feel and be remembering and have the relevance of this intrinsic feedback, because they're going to get a sense through their sensory receptors of what they're doing and how well they've done it. We still need to have these conversations and offer this extrinsic while they've still got that feeling. So I guess the timing is, think about what it is you're trying to say. Please.
I was just going to say, are there times where you would, it is a case of, no, we need to give that immediately?
100% yes. If we're in the performance moment and something is going, why would you wait till it's too late to provide that feedback?
Okay.
But you wouldn't. The other thing is, if somebody's about to do something wrong and it's going to have the most economic impact, or they're failing in some safety way where they're at some kind of emotional harm, physiological harm, mental harm, or maybe the brand will suffer as a business, we don't delay. We don't worry about people's feelings there. You're absolutely right. You give them it quick and hard. And of course, then we look to build the trust back up and have the conversations at a later date. But absolutely, yes.
So it's really quite situational in terms of timing?
For sure.
Okay.
And they're just some of the factors that I would think about.
So what about frequency?
Really interesting one, of course. So let's talk about the do's and don'ts to think about. Don't give it too often, because we could end up with that kind of dripping tap where we stop hearing it, or it doesn't have the same impact.
Okay.
But of course, we don't want to not give it often enough. If we're working on a long-term project, why would you, if I was preparing somebody for an Olympic Games and it was in 2 years' time, I wouldn't wait till the day after to give them feedback.
Right.
I would actually give them feedback systematically and periodically, all right, at different stages along the way. Because what we're doing there is we're giving feedback on the process and how we're doing stuff and people's attitude and behaviour. Are we progressing? Are we getting nearer? And that, so the frequency is ultimately defined by what it is you're trying to achieve and the time that you've got. So if we talk about performance managing somebody in the workplace, frequency of feedback is normally annually, but of course we'll have at least a 6-month kind of review of those annual bits. But we don't think that's enough, do we? Because most people formally would want a kind of one-to-one. That's not an appraisal, that's a one-to-one check-in. And I would say that's monthly. Now, a factor that I would consider, if somebody's been off work with some physiological or physical injury, so they've been out for a couple of months, and definitely if somebody's been off with some mental illness, then we should change the frequency. This is about checking in regularly. But of course it's not forever again. I wouldn't necessarily check in with everybody every single day in a formal way, but if somebody had been off, feedback would be amazing. Feedback would help build that self-confidence, would help re-establish some self-esteem, would help them to feel better about themselves because they're doing a good job. We wouldn't need that each day about you doing well,
Yeah.
but we might. So just think about the frequency in terms of the performer and the specific set of circumstances around that performance.
So I guess it comes back to the purpose again. What is it you want to achieve?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. Somebody knows what they're doing. They're on track. What am I giving the frequency? How often do we need to review whether you're still on track? If that's somebody that's been off for a sustained period of time, they're probably going to know that every couple of hours or certainly twice a day. And then maybe after a week, as confidence grows, we can change the frequency. We can turn it to maybe, once a week and so on until we get back on track with everybody else.
Okay, so when giving feedback, these are your kind of 4 top tips. Think about the manner, the content, and kind of, I guess there's a bit of background work there. Get those objectives, get that information, evidence, whatever it is, photos, videos, get that all prepared. So manner, content, think about your timing, and then the frequency.
Absolutely, yes. Last bit I want to add, you reminded me about content. Give them as much insight and information as you can. So for example, great job, Teresa. Is that useful feedback?
It's nice, but it's not very useful.
It's nice.
No.
And it is nice, nothing wrong with it. And it kind of makes you feel good about yourself. Graham thought I did a good job today. But how do I make that more relevant, more impactful?
By telling me what it is that I did that was great so that I can do more of it.
Just so we know, there's a real mental and brain science behind how to give feedback effectively. Okay, and that is if we go to the gym and we lift the right amount of weights and we eat the right amount of food and, then of course it's a fact that our muscles thicken through their cross-sectional area. If we give feedback correctly with the right amount of detail and insight, there's also a fact that our neural pathway will be improved. The neurons in our brain actually thicken. The synaptic connection improves. So that when we're talking about content, be precise. Give some proper insight and detail as to why it was a great job.
Wow. So giving effective feedback could be really powerful.
Absolutely, yeah.